What?
Come here.
That was demonic.
Okay, what do you think of my lipstick?
It smells bad, like rotten eggs.
Oh, that skin you're hot.
Now they always say congratulations. What's so hard, forgot how to vacation.
Hey guys, hey guys, hey guys, hey, 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 hey. Oh, wrong intro. I'm not gonna edit that out. Anyways, I'm rambling. Oh, and if you hear a weird noise, it's my dog panting and not my heavy breathing. Anyways, if you were there for AmberCon 2.0, you might have heard me mention that I have a background in social work. My experience as a clinical social worker provides me some insight into Amberlynn's recent diagnosis video. I asked you guys through a poll on my community tab if you'd like to see a more serious video from my channel regarding the diagnosis video, and the majority voted yes. Basically, this video is highly requested. The purpose of the following presentation is to provide an in-depth look at the disorders mentioned in Amberlynn's video and to explain how developing a clinical diagnosis works. My objective is that by the end of this presentation, I am able to bring further awareness and understanding about the mental health field to you all, so you can then form your own educated opinion on Amber's diagnoses. For clarity, I am not diagnosing Amberlynn in any way, nor am I making a statement of my opinion, professional or personal. This video is meant to entertain, educate, and more closely examine the topic at hand. So sit back, relax, grab your cucumber boat, and enjoy the presentation.
Hey guys, okay, so today is my psychiatrist appointment and I'm nervous. That's just where I'm at. I think it's gonna be a really short appointment. Where'd that accent come from?
I wanted to spend a minute defining the difference between psychiatry and psychology. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor who specializes in the treatment of mental illness through medication. Psychiatrists often work in tandem with therapists. A therapist can be educated in psychology, counseling, or social work at a postgraduate level. Therapists are defined as mental health professionals who specialize in the treatment of mental illness through psychotherapy. Psychotherapy is the treatment of mental disorders by psychological rather than medical means. For a client whose treatment requires medication, it would be best practice for that client to meet with both a psychiatrist and a therapist. A clinical assessment is what takes place during the initial meeting with the client. There are 3 ways clinicians get the information they need during the assessment. First, through observation. The clinician will examine the client's appearance, behavior, and affect. This information gives the clinician clues to what the client is experiencing. The clinician gathers a lot of data from the client during the interview process. This is where the clinician asks the client several important questions about the client's history and current symptoms. If needed, many clinicians will provide psychological testing for the client. These tests are meant to reveal further information on the client and assist in the development of the client's treatment plan. Before the clinician can get to the treatment plan, a diagnosis must be made. It is true that a client will most likely be given a diagnosis after the first appointment. There are 2 main reasons for this. First, for purposes of billing insurance, there must be a billable diagnosis. Also, this diagnosis can be changed over time as the clinician begins meeting with the client over several sessions. In the meantime, the clinician can begin working on a treatment plan based on the current diagnosis. The definition of a clinical diagnosis is the process of using assessment data to determine if the pattern of symptoms the client presents is consistent with the diagnostic criteria for a specific mental disorder. Treatment for the diagnosis is determined by the use of evidence-based practices. Evidence-based practices refer to the different types of therapies that have been proven to treat certain disorders. The glorious Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, or the DSM, is the clinician's Bible. The DSM is similar to an encyclopedia. It is the book that holds the information and criteria for each and every mental disorder. The DSM is updated as our knowledge grows. In this next segment, we are going to hear about Amber's psychiatry appointment and what she claims the doctor diagnosed her with. We will dive deep into the DSM to better understand what each diagnosis means.
Hey guys, okay, so
I look a little crazy.
I'm back from my appointment and I kind of just wanted to sit down, talk about it a bit. I don't want to go into like grave detail because it was hard enough. So the first thing is I have really bad memory loss from traumatic events that happened in my childhood. I don't remember a lot of things that happened in my childhood or even in my teenagehood. Is teenagehood like a word? I just don't remember a lot. And she said it's memory loss due to traumatic events, which makes a lot of sense.
I have really bad memory loss from traumatic events that happened in my childhood.
What she is describing is a defense mechanism. It is a mental process that is initiated to avoid anxious or negative feelings. There are two ways to experience memory loss as a defense mechanism: repression and suppression. Repression is the unconscious act of pushing away thoughts and memories. Suppression is the deliberate and conscious act of pushing away thoughts and memories. Repressing or suppressing traumatic memories is a defense mechanism initiated by the brain to protect and survive.
Obviously, I was diagnosed with depression. That is a given. I mean, I've known since I was 9 years old. That is when I was first diagnosed with depression. That hasn't changed, although I will say it's gotten worse.
Obviously, I was diagnosed with depression.
Once a clinician takes all of the client's information, it's time to develop the initial diagnosis. When a client presents with many symptoms or comorbidity, it is difficult to find the right diagnosis because many symptoms of the disorders in the DSM overlap. To be diagnosed with major depressive disorder, the client would need to meet all criteria listed below. We will go through it together just as any clinician would do to determine if their client meets the criteria for a diagnosis of major depressive disorder. The diagnostic criterion for major depressive disorder are as follows. 5 or more of the following symptoms must have been present during the same 2-week period and represent a change from previous functioning. At least one of the symptoms is either depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure. Here are the symptoms. 1. Depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated by either subjective report or observation. 2. Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities most of the day, nearly every day. 3. Significant weight loss when not dieting or weight gain, or decrease or increase in appetite nearly every day. 4. Insomnia or hypersomnia nearly every day. 5. Psychomotor agitation or retardation nearly every day. 6. Fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. 7. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. 8. Diminished ability to think or concentrate or indecisiveness nearly every day. 9. Recurrent thoughts of death, not just fear of dying. Recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, or a suicide attempt, or a specific plan for committing suicide. The symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. The episode is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or to another medical condition. The occurrence of the major depressive episode is not better explained by schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, schizophreniform disorder, delusional disorder, or other specified and unspecified schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. There has never been a manic episode or a hypomanic episode. Here is a page taken directly from the DSM-V that provides even more insight into how a clinician determines this diagnosis. A clinician must determine, through codes, the severity of the depression, whether it is considered a single or recurrent episode, as well as specify what applies to the client's depression, such as with anxious distress. Major depressive disorder may first appear at any age, but the likelihood of onset increases markedly with puberty. The course of major depressive disorder is quite variable, such that some individuals rarely, if ever, experience remission, while others experience many years with few or no symptoms between episodes. Chronicity of depressive symptoms substantially increases the likelihood of underlying personality, anxiety, and substance use disorders, and decreases the likelihood that treatment will be followed by full symptom resolution. Features associated with lower recovery rates include psychotic features, prominent anxiety, personality disorders, and symptom severity. Many bipolar illnesses begin with one or more depressive episodes, and a substantial proportion of individuals who initially appear to have major depressive disorder will prove in time to instead have a bipolar disorder. This is more likely in individuals with onset of the illness in adolescence, those with psychotic features, and those with a family history of bipolar illness. Depressions with earlier ages at onset are more familial and more likely to involve personality disturbances.
I was diagnosed with anxiety/panic disorder. Obviously, I struggle with so much anxiety. I have panic attacks. I described to her what my panic attacks look like, and it was hard to talk about. I, for one, felt like I was gonna have one just talking about it. I really don't want to trigger anyone in this video, so I'm not gonna go into detail, but that wasn't obvious. I knew that as well. Anxiety has a bunch of small little things that go along with it, and it's just a lot, and I feel like it dampens a lot of my everyday life.
I was diagnosed with anxiety/panic disorder.
Amber Lynn's statement is confusing because there is no such disorder simply called anxiety. There are several disorders in the DSM that are categorized under anxious disorders. Since she specifically mentioned panic disorder, that's what we will be focusing on. The diagnostic criterion for panic disorder include recurrent, unexpected panic attacks. A panic attack is an abrupt surge of intense fear or intense discomfort that reaches a peak within minutes, and during which time 4 or more of the following symptoms occur. Here are the symptoms. 1. Palpitations, pounding heart or accelerated heart rate. 2. Sweating. 3. Trembling or shaking. 4. Sensations of shortness of breath or smothering. 5. Feelings of choking. 6. Chest pain or discomfort. 7. Nausea or abdominal distress. 8. Feeling dizzy, unsteady, lightheaded, or faint. 9. Chills or heat sensations. 10. Paresthesias, numbness or tingling sensations. 11. Derealization, feelings of unreality, or depersonalization, being detached from oneself. 12. Fear of losing control or going crazy. 13. Fear of dying. At least one of the attacks has been followed by 1 month or more of one or both of the following. 1. Persistent concern or worry about additional panic attacks or their consequences. 2. a significant maladaptive change in behavior related to the attacks. For example, behaviors designed to avoid having panic attacks, such as avoidance of exercise or unfamiliar situations. The disturbance is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or another medical condition. The disturbance is not better explained by another mental disorder. For example, the panic attacks do not occur only in response to feared social situations, as in social anxiety, in response to circumscribed phobic objects or situations, as in a specific phobia, in response to obsessions, as in obsessive-compulsive disorder, in response to reminders of traumatic events, as in post-traumatic stress disorder, or in response to separation from attachment figures, as in separation anxiety disorder. Panic disorder refers to recurrent, unexpected panic attacks. The term recurrent literally means more than one unexpected panic attack. The term unexpected refers to a panic attack for which there is no obvious cue or trigger at the time of occurrence. That is, the attack appears to occur from out of the blue, such as when the individual is relaxing or emerging from sleep. The determination of whether panic attacks are expected or unexpected is made by the clinician, who makes this judgment based on a combination of careful questioning as to the sequence of events preceding or leading up to the attack, and the individual's own judgment of whether or not the attack seemed to occur for no apparent reason. The worries about panic attacks or their consequences usually pertain to physical concerns, such as worry that panic attacks reflect the presence of life-threatening illnesses, social concerns such as embarrassment or fear of being judged negatively by others because of visible panic symptoms, and concerns about mental functioning, such as going crazy or losing control. The maladaptive changes in behavior represent attempts to minimize or avoid panic attacks or their consequences.
So this next one, these next two for me are ones that it's just like, they kind of hit me harder because I knew the other ones were obvious. I was diagnosed with obsessive compulsive personality disorder. I've always known that I had obsessive tendencies within the way I do things in my life. I have talked about this before in a very long past YouTube video. I don't like going into detail with this stuff because I am embarrassed. That's just the way I am. And it's just to finally have a name to what I've been experiencing is a little cray-cray for me. And I feel like I'm a little numb to it.
I was diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive personality disorder.
The DSM-V differentiates obsessive-compulsive disorder from obsessive-compulsive personality disorder. Since Amber Lynn is referring to the personality disorder, that's what we'll focus on. Personality disorders are extremely difficult to diagnose. Typically, the clinician must see the client long-term before being able to diagnose this classification of disorders. Personality disorders are categorized in clusters. There are 3 clusters, A, B, and C. Cluster A disorders are characterized by odd or eccentric behavior. Cluster B disorders are characterized by dramatic or erratic behavior. And cluster C disorders, such as obsessive-compulsive personality disorder, are characterized by anxiety. The criterion for obsessive-compulsive personality disorder includes a pervasive pattern of preoccupation with orderliness, perfectionism, and mental and interpersonal control at the expense of flexibility, openness, and efficiency, beginning by early adulthood and present in a variety of contexts as indicated by 4 or more of the following. 1. Is preoccupied with details, rules, lists, order, organization, or schedules to the extent that the major point of the activity is lost. 2. Shows perfectionism that interferes with task completion. 3. Is excessively devoted to work and productivity to the exclusion of leisure activities and friendships. 4. Is over-conscientious, scrupulous, and inflexible about matters of morality, ethics, or values. 5. Is unable to discard worn-out or worthless objects even when they have no sentimental value. 6. is reluctant to delegate tasks or work to others unless they submit to exactly his or her way of doing things. 7. Adopts a miserly spending style toward both self and others. Money is viewed as something to be hoarded for future catastrophes. 8. Shows rigidity and stubbornness. A personality disorder is an enduring pattern of inner experience and behavior that deviates markedly from the expectation of the individual's culture, is pervasive and inflexible, has an onset in adolescence or early adulthood, is stable over time, and leads to distress or impairment. Individuals frequently present with co-occurring personality disorders from different clusters. The essential feature of obsessive-compulsive personality disorder is a preoccupation with orderliness, perfectionism, and mental and interpersonal control at the expense of flexibility, openness, and efficiency. This pattern begins by early adulthood and is present in a variety of contexts. For example, when such individuals misplace a list of things to be done, they will spend an inordinate amount of time looking for the list rather than just spending a few moments recreating it from memory and proceeding to accomplish the tasks. Time is poorly allocated, and the most important tasks are left to the last moment. The perfectionism and self-imposed high standards of performance cause significant dysfunction and distress in these individuals. They may become so involved in making every detail of a project absolutely perfect that the project is never finished. They often feel that they do not have time to take an evening or a weekend day off or go out on an outing just to relax. Hobbies or recreational activities are approached as serious tasks requiring careful organization and hard work to master. The emphasis is on perfect performance. They may force themselves and others to follow rigid moral principles and very strict standards of performance. They may also be mercilessly self-critical about their own mistakes. Individuals with this disorder are rigidly differential to authority and rules and insist on quite literal compliance with no rule bending for extenuating circumstances. These individuals plan ahead in meticulous detail and are unwilling to consider changes. Totally wrapped up in their own perspective, they have difficulty acknowledging the viewpoints of others. Friends and colleagues may become frustrated by this constant rigidity. Obsessive-compulsive personality disorder is easily distinguishable from the separate obsessive-compulsive disorder by the presence of true obsessions and compulsions in the latter.
The next one for me is I am bipolar. I have known for a very long time without actually being diagnosed that I am bipolar, and for someone to finally tell me that I am bipolar and I'm going to be put on a mood stabilizer. She told me that the reason why antidepressants, especially Wellbutrin, the reason why they haven't worked for me, because you guys know I've done Prozac, Wellbutrin, I've done Lexapro, is because I am bipolar. She said that a mood stabilizer is going to first help with my depression, and then once she hires my dosage, it's going to finally then help with the fact that I'm bipolar. I look at certain aspects of my life and I'm just like, that is why I react the way I do, why I go several days without leaving my room, and then all of a sudden I'm like, yes, let's do everything under the sun, let's film 16 videos in one day, it's just crazy. It's just everything. Like, it's just everything adds up and it just makes sense, and it just sucks because it's just like so much. It's just so much at once to be told, like, and I'm just like, I'm a wreck.
I am bipolar.
There are several bipolar-related disorders. The most prevalent are bipolar 1, which is defined by manic episodes, bipolar 2, defined by a pattern of depressive and hypomanic episodes, and cyclothymic disorder. Amber seems to be describing bipolar 2, so that is what we will focus on. The diagnostic criterion for bipolar 2 is complex. For a diagnosis of bipolar 2 disorder, It is necessary to meet the following criteria for a current or past hypomanic episode and the following criteria for a current or past major depressive episode. So first we're going to define the criteria for a hypomanic episode. A distinct period of abnormally and persistently elevated, expansive, or irritable mood and abnormally and persistently increased activity or energy, lasting at least 4 consecutive days and present most of the day, nearly every day. During the period of mood disturbance and increased energy and activity, 3 or more of the following symptoms have persisted. 4, if the mood is only irritable, represent a noticeable change from usual behavior and have been present to a significant degree. 1. Inflated self-esteem or grandiosity. 2. Decreased need for sleep. For example, feels rested after only 3 hours of sleep. 3. More talkative than usual or pressured to keep talking. 4. Flight of ideas or subjective experience that thoughts are racing. 5. Distractibility. 6. Increase in goal-directed activity or psychomotor agitation. 7. Excessive involvement in activities that have high potential for painful consequences. For example, engaging in unrestrained buying sprees, sexual indiscretions, or foolish business investments. The episode is associated with an unequivocal change in functioning that is uncharacteristic of the individual when not symptomatic. The disturbance in mood and the change in functioning are observable by others. The episode is not severe enough to cause marked impairment in social or occupational functioning or to necessitate hospitalization. If there are psychotic features, the episode is, by definition, manic. The episode is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance. Now let's define a major depressive episode. 5 or more of the following symptoms must be present during the same 2-week period and represent a change from previous functioning. At least one of the symptoms is either depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure. 1. Depressed mood most of the day, nearly every day, as indicated by either subjective report or observation made by others. 2. Markedly diminished interest or pleasure in all or almost all activities, most of the day, nearly every day. 3. Significant weight loss when not dieting or weight gain, or decrease or increase in appetite nearly every day. 4. Insomnia or hypersomnia nearly every day. 5. Psychomotor agitation or retardation nearly every day. 6. Fatigue or loss of energy nearly every day. 7. Feelings of worthlessness or excessive or inappropriate guilt nearly every day. 8. Diminished ability to think or concentrate or indecisiveness nearly every day. 9. Recurrent thoughts of death, not just fear of dying, recurrent suicidal ideation without a specific plan, a suicide attempt, or a specific plan for committing suicide. The symptoms cause clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. The episode is not attributable to the physiological effects of a substance or another medical condition. So to be diagnosed with bipolar II disorder, criteria must have been met for at least one hypomanic episode and at least one major depressive episode. There must never have been a manic episode. The occurrence of the hypomanic episodes and major depressive episodes is not better explained by schizoaffective disorder, schizophrenia, schizophreniform disorder, delusional disorder, or other specified or unspecified schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. The symptoms of depression are the unpredictability caused by frequent alternation between periods of depression and hypomania causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Individuals with bipolar II disorder typically present to a clinician during a major depressive episode and are unlikely to complain initially of hypomania. Typically, the hypomanic episodes themselves do not cause impairment. Instead, the impairment results from the major depressive episodes or from a persistent pattern of unpredictable mood changes and fluctuating, unreliable interpersonal or occupational functioning. Individuals with bipolar II disorder may not view the hypomanic episodes as pathological or disadvantageous, although others may be troubled by the individual's erratic behavior. A hypomanic episode should not be confused with the several days of euthymia and restored energy or activity that may follow remission of a major depressive episode. Individuals with bipolar II disorder have greater chronicity of illness and spend, on average, more time in the depressive phase of their illness, which can be severe and/or disabling. Another point to make is that if you recall when we discussed major depressive disorder, one of the criteria is that no manic or hypomanic episode has occurred. If Amber's psychiatrist diagnosed her with bipolar II, it would rule out major depressive disorder. In other words, it's impossible to be diagnosed with both.
I really hope that I'm not offending anyone by me being sad that I'm diagnosed with these things. It's just, this is new. This is new for me.
And I am completely honest with you guys. And a lot of what I tell you.
Sure, Jan.
So now you guys know everything, and it's no longer me just guessing or diagnosing myself. That is just the truth and what it is now, unfortunately. So now the only thing I can do is take the mood stabilizer, get better, see a therapist, move on with my life, hopefully, and we never have to go back.
Cognitive behavioral therapy is an evidence-based practice that has been proven to treat every disorder Amberlynn claims she has been diagnosed with. Cognitive behavioral therapy is a type of psychotherapy in which negative patterns of thought about the self and the world are challenged in order to alter unwanted behavior patterns or treat mood disorders. It is a form of talk therapy which is provided by a qualified therapist. For an individual who is experiencing the many symptoms we talked about today, best practice would be for that person to seek psychotherapy in conjunction with medication for long-term treatment. Thank you all for taking the time to watch this video. I hope I was able to provide further knowledge of mental health and insight to how a diagnosis is developed.
Whatever. But I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye.
Now they always say congratulations.